Okay, the mic is set to the more sensitive setting, so you don't have to keep it too close to your face. Okay. All on purpose. So just test out the volume first. That's why I can adjust it from here. This is too close.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming. It's a very important Sunday. It's a very important Sunday because today, in a couple hours, the registration for Sadhu Sangha retreat opens. So I hope that everybody has their profiles set on their apps to register, because typically this retreat of the largest gathering of Kirtan chanters in North America gets sold out very quickly. So I know I did mine this morning, but I think for everybody it'll open up in a couple hours. All right, so today we will be speaking from Bhagavad Gita. There is a very important day that is coming up in this coming week. Does anybody know? Has anybody had a look at the calendar for this week? Yes, and also from our in our Guru Parampara Acharyas that there's an appearance day.
I think I just forgot the name.
Yes.
Because I saw the calendar.
Yes.
Today.
So it is the appearance day of Srila Gopal Bhatt Goswami. And those who know about Gopal Bhatt Goswami, actually we are indebted to him for many, many things, but most importantly, one of the most revered, loved, predominant deities in Sri Vrindavan Dham, which is Shri Radha Ramanji. So today we'll be speaking about him, and we'll be recounting the glories of Gopal Bhatt Goswami and our acharyas. Then I have a very special darshan gift for all of you, because with me, I have something very special that comes directly from the body of Shri Radha Ramanji. So you can take this camera, so I'm going to show it on the camera as well. So you can take darshan of this very special thing, and I'll explain what these are. And I'll explain what this is during the class. So you will have a better appreciation of this most wonderful, transcendental gift that we are fortunate sitting here in Round Rock to have amongst us. So we'll start with the premise in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4, verse number 11. So those who have your mobile phones on you can bring up the verse 4:11, and we'll also display it on the large screen up here, those who don't know how to get to it. So we'll start first with the prayers, with the introductory prayers to invoke auspiciousness amongst all of us. Om Agyanati Midandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatham Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tham Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vithamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishnavanu Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatriyubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Shri Radha Kunj Bihari ki Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hukum karoti vachalam pangum langayate giram yat kripataham aham vande paramananda madhavam. Chapter 4, verse 11. Ye yatha mam prapadayante tams tathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartamanu vartante manushya partha sarvasha. Please repeat after me. Ye, all who, yatha, as, mam, unto me, prapadayante, surrender, tan, them, tatha, so, eva, certainly, bhajami, reward, aham, I, mama, my, vartama, path, anuvartante, follow, manushyaha, all men, partha, O son of Pritha, sarvashaha, in all respects. Translation: as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Everyone is searching for Krishna in the different aspects of his manifestations. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is partially realized in his impersonal Brahma-Jyotir effulgence, and as the all-pervading Supersoul dwelling within everything, including the particles of atoms. But Krishna is fully realized only by his pure devotees. Consequently, Krishna is the object of everyone's realization, and thus anyone and everyone is satisfied according to one's desire to have him. In this transcendental world also, Krishna reciprocates with his pure devotees in the transcendental attitude, just as the devotee wants him. One devotee may want Krishna as Supreme Master, another as his personal friend, another as his son, and still another as his lover. Krishna rewards all the devotees equally, according to their different intensities of love for him. In the material world, the same reciprocations of feelings are there, and they are equally exchanged by the Lord with the different types of worshippers. The pure devotees, both here and in the transcendental abode, associate with him in person and are able to render personal service to the Lord, and thus derive transcendental bliss in his loving service. As for those who are impersonalists and who want to commit spiritual suicide by annihilating the individual existence of the living entity, Krishna helps also by absorbing them into his effulgence. Such impersonalists do not agree to accept the eternal, blissful personality of Godhead. Consequently, they cannot relish the bliss of transcendental personal service to the Lord, having extinguished their individuality. Some of them who are not firmly situated even in the impersonal existence return to this material field to exhibit their dormant desires of four activities. They are not admitted into the spiritual planets, but they are again given a chance to act on the material planets. For those who are fruitive workers, the Lord awards the desired results of their prescribed duties as the Yagneshwar. And those who are yogis seeking mystic powers are awarded such powers. In other words, everyone is dependent for success upon his mercy alone, and all kinds of spiritual processes are but different degrees of success on the same path. Unless, therefore, one comes to the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, all attempts remain imperfect, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one is without desire, the condition of the devotees, or is desirous of all fruitive results, or is after liberation, one should with all efforts try to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead for complete perfection, culminating in Krishna consciousness. Jai Shri Prabhupada. So, as I mentioned briefly, that today's topic is very near and dear to our heart because it directly glorifies our acharyas, especially Gopal Bhatt Goswami, whose most loving deity Shri Radha Ramanji in Vrindavan is one of the presiding deities of the 7 most prominent temples in Sri Vrindavan Dham. And if we meditate on the purport that Srila Prabhupada is writing, and what Krishna is saying, that as all surrendered to me, unto me, I reward them accordingly. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that Krishna is object of everyone's realization, and thus anyone and everyone is satisfied according to one's desire to have him. Him is Krishna. And we have many such examples in our history, whether it's Gopal Bhatt Goswami's desire for his Shaligram Shilas to manifest into Sri Radharamanji, or it is Prahlad Maharaj's desire to have Lord appear in front of him, because Hiranyakashipu challenged that if Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can he appear out of this pillar? And just by meditation, to fulfill the desire of his devotee, Krishna is so merciful that he appears. So these are 2 wonderful examples. And as we meditate upon the history of our acharyas, of our Guru Parampara, we learn that in Gaura Leela, in the year 1516, 1 year after Lord Chaitanya's visit to Vrindavan, Sri Rupa Goswami and Sri Sanatana Goswami arrived in Vrindavan Dham. Yes? And there is also that, there is a very important reason that why they come to Vrindavan Dham. Because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had requested them, amongst other things, to discover the lost places of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. At that time, Vrindavan 500 years ago was very much different than what it is today. It is not an exaggeration, but Vrindavan was at the time of the Goswamis, in every sense of the word, a jungle. Okay? There are some pictures that have circulated on social media over the last 15 years, which has even shown the pictures of the Parikrama Marg of Vrindavan just 30, 40 years ago. And even in that, it just seems like you're walking through a forest, kunjas of Vrindavan. Vrindavan is predominantly 12 forests, but in those 12 forests, there are sub-forests, and then there are sub-forests. But imagine 500 years ago, what it would have been is just a jungle. So today we're going to traverse through a little bit of that. So as such, as, and Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, they wandered through Vrindavan's many, many forests. Obviously, they had to live very austerely. When we go for Vrindavan Parikrama, we look for quickly making reservations for our hotels, where there is hot water, there is AC, there is heat, and which is in a very close proximity to all the temples, so that we don't have to take any austerities. Yes? But our acharyas, they had no means of transportation. They had to walk. They had to walk through the jungles. They had to walk through different forests. And they had to live very austerely. They lived under a different tree every night. And more detailed research shows that they would often take shelter in the hollow of a tree, maybe a clearing in the thorny thickets of some of these, forests. Sometimes they lived in underground caves. There are some of these caves still there. I remember many, many years ago, one time we were going for Govardhan Parikrama, and we were waiting there because we had heard that Srila Sachinandan Maharaj had been living in a cave for almost a month. And he would come, the message was sent to him, and he would hopefully come and meet with us. So there are caves. So it is said that even Jiva Goswami came a little later, and he once resided in a vacant crocodile hole in Nandaghat on the Yamuna River. A crocodile cave. Who would want to go and stay there and meditate? But that is the life they lived in these very austere settings. So Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, they came first. They chanted the holy names, wrote these beautiful sublime books on the science of Krishna consciousness. Srila Sanatana Goswami would sleep only 2 or 3 hours in the night. He would actually, not only just in the night, during 24 hours, he would not sleep more than that. In the night, he would burn the dried leaves, and with the light that comes on burning the leaves, he would continue to write his books. And their life's work are in these books they have given to the world. The books that are full of jewels of bhakti and precious gemstones that are embedded on the path back home, back to Godhead. So, of course, we can understand that whatever conditions Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami had to face, they were always blissful. Why? Because eternally they are always in their spiritual forms as Sri Rupa Manjari. Who is Rupa Manjari? She is one of the chief assistant of Lalita Sakhi, one of the 8 predominant Sakhis of Srimati Radharani. And Sanatana Goswami is Lavanga Manjari, maid servants, both of them, of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna, who would appear as none other than Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and give them the service as Rupa and Sanatana. They did this service so well. Prabhupada said one time that Vrindavan is the gift of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. They wrote many books, as I said. So poor people like us could take advantage and become Krishna conscious. By poor people, Prabhupada doesn't mean by the richness of the things that we have, but he means by the richness of Krishna consciousness. So we can become rich, and that richness never goes away. Srila Jiva Goswami arrived a little bit later in 1535, 19 years after Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami had come to Vrindavan Dham. And as Jiva Goswami entered Vraja Bhumi, he was greeted by Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Gopal Bhatt Goswami, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Prabodhananda Saraswati, Kashishwar Pandit. Like so many of our acharyas welcomed Jiva Goswami. And after that, Jiva Goswami took shelter of Rupa Goswami in particular. And he rendered so many menial services to him. Like he was begging alms for Rupa Goswami. He was cooking for him. He was washing his feet. He was washing his clothes. He was helping prepare all the manuscripts. They are great acharyas, all of them. But they rendered menial services. Sometimes we might feel we are senior devotees, we've been in the movement for so many years, others should do this service, that service, why should I be doing all the services? And other times we might feel I'm the only one doing this service, nobody else is there. But acharyas have shown us by their own example throughout history that they rendered service for the pleasure of Mahaprabhu and the spiritual masters, not for each other, just alone. Now, that was their mood. So during these times, devotees inspired by the 6 Goswamis, they were writing books about Krishna consciousness in Vrindavan. Then there were other devotees there as well, and they were also writing. They were writing on, what do you think they were writing on? Today we take a laptop and we start typing, notepad, wordpad, this pad, that pad, iPad, you pad, me pad. They were writing on palm leaves, barks, even old deity dresses. But our Goswamis, however, used handmade paper donated by the Rajput kings of Rajasthan. Particularly, the gifts were coming from Raja Jai Singh. And on this royal paper, they wrote books like Ujjwala Nilamani, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Gopal Champu. And I've heard that even today in Jaipur, you can purchase this handmade paper. And a book called Sadhana Dipika mentions that Srila Rupa Goswami had many skills. He could prepare and carve deities. He could draw expertly. He was a master in astrology and mathematics. He was fluent in Sanskrit, Persian, Bengali, and other languages. Think about that for a second. 500 years ago. Not now when we have all these apps that teach you how to converse in Spanish and German and Italian and French, and then you can learn over time. We're talking 500 years ago, and there was nothing that existed of modern technology. Yet he was fluent in all these different languages. And of course, he was a very renounced Gaudiya Vaishnava philosopher. He was very, very popular, very respected by all sampradayas. And in year 1542, Srila Rupa Goswami utilized his talent to personally carve, install, and offer a very beautiful deity to the world. And that was Damodar Krishna. A very beautiful deity. He gave it to Jiva Goswami, his disciple. And then there are some interesting details. Rupa Goswami carved Damodar from a piece of black marble that was brought from Vindhya Parvat. Where is that? Which state? Madhya Pradesh. Madhya Pradesh, in central India. And you can see this deity today in Jaipur. There's a beautiful temple. The deity is not very large. Damodar Krishna is only 8 inches, no more. It's only 8 inches. So before any large temples were built, our Goswamis were worshipping these deities very simply. Of course, with utmost devotion. But because they were renunciates, they did not have many facilities to worship the deity. Usually they kept them under the tree under which they slept that night. Historical records state that Radha Ramanji, whom we will be talking about today, that the self-manifested deity of Srila Gopal Bhatt Goswami was worshipped in a tree for many, many, many years before he got his temple as it is today. There, instead of the present Radharaman temple, there used to be a large lake. Did anybody know that? There used to be a large lake in place of where the Radharaman temple is today. The lake was connected to Yamuna, which is a little bit, a 10-minute walk from where the temple is today. And at night, Radharaman's pujaris would put him in a boat anchored in the middle of the lake for security and safety. And there, in that boat, there would be stay guards with bows and arrows. And every night, those arrows would be dipped in homemade poison. And it is described that even if that arrow just nicks you, you would die. And it is said that those both bows and arrows are still somewhere in the Radharaman temple. So during his presence in Vrindavan, Jiva Goswami was very active in setting things up. He was a very good organizer. For example, in 1558, Jiva Goswami purchased this land that we now know as Sevakunj. Has anybody been to Sevakunj in Vrindavan? Yes, few of you have gone Sevakunj. Actually, there's a very beautiful painting many of you have in your homes that I have seen. Like Vamanari Prabhu has that painting of divine couple on his wall, with Radha and Krishna are sitting and they are just admiring each other's beauty and tears are flowing through their eyes. And in the Kunja, there are so many different faces on that painting that are hidden. It's a very beautiful painting by Jadurani Mataji. That painting is actually of depicting Sevakunj. So there are so many loving pastimes of Radha and Krishna that took place there 5,000 years ago in that particular place alone. And then there are records in Vrindavan Research Institute indicating that Jiva Goswami purchased this area of Sevakunj for how much back then, almost 500 years ago? 30 rupees. 30 rupees. 30 rupees might not mean a whole lot today. In dollar amount, it is approximately 35 cents or 40 cents. Yeah. So almost 500 years ago, he spent 30 rupees to purchase that piece of land from Ali Khan Chaudhary. Ali Khan Chaudhary was Emperor Akbar's local landlord at that time in that area of Vrindavan. And the original deed for that purchase is kept in Vrindavan Research Institute. By the way, I should mention that all these things that I'm narrating to you, I've heard from Srila Indradumna Maharaj's lectures last year that he gave, last couple of years he gave in COVID times in Vrindavan, and also from Amarendra Prabhu and His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. So there's an amalgamation of all the data and beautiful nectar that is in today's pastimes being narrated, coming from the classes that I've heard. So, as I mentioned, this original deed is still kept in Vrindavan Research Institute, and it is mentioned in that deed that that particular tract of land that he bought included Sevakunj, Dangali, Imlital, Shringarsthali, and Rasasthali. So all these places of pilgrimage were purchased back then, and the boundaries of the property that he purchased for these 30 rupees that were marked by 4 trees in each corner: a tamal tree, a banyan tree, a peepal tree, and a kadamba tree. So 4 corners marked the territory. In his last days, Srila Rupa Goswami, he gave all his manuscripts to Jiva Goswami, and he requested him to write commentaries on them. And when Srila Rupa Goswami departed, Jiva Goswami placed his transcendental body in Samadhi at the Radha Damodar temple. And on that auspicious day of his passing, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Gopal Bhatt Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, and all the other Vaishnavas who were in attendance proclaimed to Jiva Goswami that from this day onwards, you are our master and our leader. He was the youngest of all the 6 Goswamis, and he came later, but he was a good organizer. He was a visionary. He probably perhaps saw Vrindavan as it is today, with thousands of temples and millions of pilgrims, and a transcendental place that will be glorified all over the world, back then 500 years ago. And Jiva Goswami went to the most prolific of all the 6 Goswamis. He wrote volumes and volumes of transcendental literature. And when he passed away, he was also placed in the Samadhi in his dear Radha Damodar temple. And as ISKCON devotees, we must, whenever we visit Sri Vrindavan Dham, make a point to visit the Samadhis of these great acharyas at Radha Damodar Mandir. For those who don't know what Samadhi is, unlike common people who are either cremated or buried or more or less forgotten after a certain time after death, unlike them, great devotees of the Lord are buried but remembered and worshipped. I don't remember my forefathers going back more than 80 years. But here we are talking about our acharyas 500 years later. We know where their samadhis are, where their place of residence is. Their spiritualized bodies are lovingly placed, if possible, in the sacred earth of Sri Vrindavan, near one of Krishna's temples or his Leela sthans. Srila Prabhupada once said that if you cultivate spiritual knowledge in large quantities, then your body is no longer material. It becomes spiritualized, also called as Chinmaya. Therefore, the body of great saintly persons is not burnt or cremated, but it's placed in a samadhi. Because a Vaishnava's body is Chinmaya, it's pure. Therefore, samadhi mandirs tend to be focal points for faithful devotees to connect with the mercy, the blessings, the inspiration which continuously emanates from these realized souls who are residing in their samadhis. So by visiting samadhis and offering obeisances and circumambulating them, offering prayers, offering articles of worship, sincere devotees can receive the mercy of these great souls. So because the liberated souls are beyond the limitations of time and space, they can reciprocate with us as worshippers. One such follower, a compatriot of Srila Rupa Goswami that we will discuss today, we're still getting started, is Srila Gopal Bhatt Goswami. Yeah. And of course, as I mentioned, his Ishtadev, Sri Radharamanji. The difficulty, there is a very There's a big difficulty, by the way, to speak anything about Srila Gopal Bhatt Goswami. And the difficulty is that there is not enough information about him anywhere. At least compared to Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami. There's hardly any mention of Gopal Bhatt Goswami in our scriptures. He's not mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat, he's not mentioned in Chaitanya Mangal, which are two of the great works on the life and pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in his Chaitanya Charitamrita only mentions him very briefly. He just writes that Srila Gopal Bhatt Goswami is one of the 6 prominent Shiksha Gurus. But fortunately, Narahari Chakravarti gives us a detailed account somewhat of Srila Gopal Bhatt Goswami in his Bhakti Ratnakar. So the question is might be raised, that why is Gopal Bhatt Goswami hidden? Why is he hidden from our view? The most probable answer is that maybe out of extreme humility. Maybe he didn't want to be mentioned. Vaishnavas are humble by nature. Gopal Bhatt Goswami had extreme humility. Srila Prabhupada mentions in Chaitanya Charitamrita's Adi Leela chapter 10, verse 105, that when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami took permission from all the Vaishnavas before writing Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Gopal Bhatt Goswami also gave him his blessings. But he requested him not to mention his name anywhere in the book. So therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has mentioned Gopal Bhatt Goswami only very cautiously in maybe only 1 or 2 places in entire Chaitanya Charitamrita, the entire history of the lifetime of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Srila Prabhupada made it very clear that this was the intent. This was out of humility of Gopal Bhatt Goswami that he didn't want to be mentioned. Now compare that to us. I did something, nobody is giving me any credit for my work. I'm at my workplace. Look, I did such a difficult project. I completed it in time, with less resources, with so much speed. But my boss never mentioned me, didn't give me a raise. I did so much for my family members. Nobody recognizes what I did for them. I do so much service in the temple. Nobody sees, nobody mentions my name. I'm working all the time. Yeah. These are the examples of humility come from our acharyas that we need to imbibe in our mood daily. Not just for 15, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours when we're in front of somebody. Sri Kavi Karnapurna has revealed to us in his Gaura Gunadesh Dipika that who is Gopal Bhatt Goswami? Who is this illustrious personality? He writes that in spiritual world, Gopal Bhatt Goswami is Ananga Manjari. She who was formerly among Ananga Manjari has appeared to enrich Mahaprabhu's pastimes as Srila Gopal Bhatt Goswami. Some say that Gopal Bhatt Goswami is actually Guna Manjari. So there's, some debate. Ananga Manjari, Guna Manjari, they are still Manjaris. They're residents, eternal residents of Vrindavan Dham in the spiritual world. Gopal Bhatt Goswami was born in year 1503 in Christian calendar. He was born near Sri Rangam in southern part of India as the son of illustrious Venkata Bhatt. Venkata Bhatt was an aristocratic Indian Brahmana from Ramanuja Sampradaya. And in 1511, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, during his tour of South India, visited the holy dham of Sri Rangam. And it is described that when he went to the temple to take the darshan of the deity of Ranganath, an extraordinarily beautiful deity. Has anybody been to Sri Rangam? Yes, you have. 5 or 6 of you. So I assume that since you've been there, you've seen the deity of Ranganath, this extraordinarily beautiful deity of Ranganath. When Mahaprabhu saw that deity, he started chanting and dancing in ecstasy. And it is described that during that kirtan, when Mahaprabhu was roaring like a lion. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is often referred to as Hari, and it can have a number of meanings. But one meaning of Hari is also lion. For example, Lord Nrsingadev is called Narahari, half man, half lion. So why is Mahaprabhu sometimes referred to as lion? Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati explains in Chaitanya Chandamrita that Lord Chaitanya has golden complexion like a lion. His hair is down to his shoulders like a mane of a lion. He has a broad chest and a thin waist like a lion. He appeared in Simha Rasi or Leo constellation. And like a lion, he would enter a cave and roar and send the resident elephants running from the cave for their lives. It looked like sometime Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would live in caves also during his tour of South India. And he would roar, and the elephants would leave. And then he would occupy the cave. Similarly, our acharyas say that when we may invite the lion of Lord Chaitanya into our heart, where he would roar, Haribol, Haribol, then that roar will send the elephant-like anarthas from our heart running. And what are those anarthas? Lust, anger, greed. Running away from, they can run away from our hearts if we are chanting the names of the Lord with sincerity. Only then the Supreme Lord can occupy the cave of our heart forever. So Venkata Bhatt was a priest in this temple, and when he saw the amazing kirtan that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was leading, he was stunned. He was completely stunned. At one point, he grabbed the feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he requested him, please come to my house. Please come to my house. And this was the beginning of the Chaturmas period, 4 months, when sannyasis don't have to travel. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agreed. By this time, he was a sannyasi. He had renounced everything. So when the Lord got there, Venkata Bhatt washed the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he gave that Charnamrit to his 10-year-old son, Gopal, who is Gopal Bhatt, to drink. And it is described in Bhakti Ratnakar that when Gopal Bhatt Goswami drank the Charnamrit from the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gopal Bhatt Goswami started weeping and crying. And there is one reason that is explained, is because Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahe Anya. Mahaprabhu is a combination of Radha and Krishna. So Radha is present in him. He is in the mood of Radha Rani. And Gopal Bhatt Goswami is who? I just mentioned. Ananga Manjari. Who is who? Younger sister of Radha Rani. So naturally, when you meet your family members after a very long time, there are tears of joy upon seeing them. Yes. So Gopal Bhatt Goswami was weeping and crying. It's a poetic way of saying, but it was because he was meeting with Radharani in the mood of, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the mood of Radharani. So they were uniting again. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ended up staying for 4 months with Venkata Bhatt's family. And Gopal Bhatt, as a young 10-year-old, had a chance to render a lot of service to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally. One day Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was resting while Gopal Bhatt Goswami was massaging him. And it is said that, pleased with his menial service of just massaging him, Lord disclosed many, many confidential things to him. He addressed Gopal Bhatt Goswami as a confidential companion of Srimati Radharani. Gopal Bhatt Goswami replied, "You are my lord, the son of Nanda Maharaj. You have assumed Srimati Radharani's color as a disguise. I am very sad because I did not get to witness your pastimes in Navadvip, your appearance, your pastimes of childhood as a householder, etc., etc." And the acharyas write that Gopal Bhatt Goswami's sorrow was so clearly evident. His eyes were full of tears, and his actions reflected the ecstasy of divine madness as a 10-year-old. So Lord Chaitanya was silent. He didn't say anything. But that night, in order to pacify Gopal Bhatt Goswami, he appeared to him in a dream. And in that dream, Gopal Bhatt Goswami saw Navadvip with all the tall palm trees everywhere and the river Ganges. Then suddenly he saw Nimai Pandit walking gracefully. Nimai Pandit is same as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, walking gracefully on the banks of river like a young elephant. And when Gopal Bhatt closely looked, he also saw Lord Nityananda and Advaita Acharya and many others accompanying the Lord, and they were all chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And as the Kirtan party approached, Mahaprabhu kept looking at Gopal Bhatt Goswami's direction. And as the party met him, Lord Nityananda Prabhu embraced him. He reached to Gopal Bhatt Goswami, he embraced him. And as soon as he embraced him, Gopal Bhatt Goswami woke up from his dream. Now he was in total ecstasy. Imagine, you're sleeping, and instead of getting these mundane dreams that we do, in your dream comes your Ishtadev, and he embraces you. What would you feel? You would also wake up in ecstasy. Is this real? But only in case of Gopal Bhatt Goswami, it was real. He jumped out and he ran out of his room to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's quarters. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was actually waiting for Gopal Bhatt Goswami to arrive. But when Gopal Bhatt Goswami opened the door, it is said that instead of seeing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a sannyasi, he saw the Lord had assumed the form of a cowherd boy with a blue complexion playing his flute, just like there Radha Kunj Bihari is doing. Something similar had also happened to Ramananda Roy. There's another pastime. It is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita that one time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also appeared to him as a cowherd boy. And at that time, Ramananda Roy had said to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that Bhaile dekhilun tomara sannyasi swarup, ebe toma dekhi muni shama goparup. At first, I saw you appear like a sannyasi, but now I'm seeing you as Sham Sundar, the cowherd boy. Then from that form, as a cowherd boy, Lord Chaitanya turned into Nimai Pandit, as Gopal Bhatt Goswami had seen him in his dream. And stunned by seeing this, Gopal Bhatt Goswami fell at the feet of Nimai Pandit. But when he got up, he found himself once again with the Lord as the sannyasi, with the shaven head and saffron cloth. This way, Gopal Bhatt Goswami had very, very personal dealings with Lord Chaitanya at Sri Rangam. At the end of the 4 months, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was preparing to continue his tour of South India, you can imagine what the young Gopal would feel. Has it ever happened that, at least in my childhood, my family would visit me, during summer vacation, when the schools were off, my cousins would come, family members would come, they would stay with us for almost, several weeks. And when they were about to leave, we would have tears in our eyes because they were leaving. So Gopal, little Gopal, 10-year-old Gopal had the similar emotions that when Mahaprabhu was about to leave, he started crying. He came to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he said, "My dear Mahaprabhu, I want to come with you. Take me with you. I want to serve you." He said, "Premadana Jan, without prema, one is impoverished. Take me, empower me." But Mahaprabhu said, no, not now, no. He instructed him that you should stay here with your parents. They are elderly, take care of them. And one day when they depart, my instruction for you is to go to Sri Vrindavan Dham. There you will meet Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami, and they will reveal to you the mysteries of my truth and my mood. And in this way, Gopal, you will understand everything about Shri Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan Dham. So Mahaprabhu left. And that was the last time Gopal Bhatt Goswami ever saw Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in person. 10-year-old. And in time, Gopal Bhatt Goswami took initiation from his uncle, brother of Venkata Bhatt, the great Prabodhananda Saraswati. That Gopal Bhatt Goswami was a disciple of Prabodhananda Saraswati is actually confirmed in Hari Bhakti Vilas. And years later, when Gopal Bhatt's parents died, instead of running to Jagannath Puri, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was performing all his very special pastimes, and it was closer, much closer to where he was, he did not go to Puri. He dutifully left for Vrindavan Dham as was instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He had a choice of Vani or Vapu. Vapu means the personal association of a great soul. And Vani means to follow their instructions. So you can imagine, Mahaprabhu is not that far away in Jagannath Puri. He still has, some years left here on this planet. And we know how close of an association they had when he was 10-year-old. But he chose Vani to follow the instructions. This is very instructive for all of us as well, because both Vani and Vapu are important. But Srila Prabhupada has told us that of the two, Vani Seva is more important. Because the form of the Lord, the spiritual master may disappear at some point, but the instructions remain eternal. Prabhupada would sometimes repeat the saying, Vilasi Rutat Nityam Bhakti Siddhanta Vani. May the teachings of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati eternally dance in the courtyard of my heart. And once Prabhupada said to a group of his disciples, I did not know anything about writing, but my spiritual master told me to spread Lord Krishna's glories in English. So this is what I try to do, following in the steps of my Guru Maharaj. He was such a transcendental aristocrat. I have no personal great qualification of anything. I just try to follow the instructions. This is what Srila Prabhupada said to his disciples. And that is also our life, following instructions of Srila Prabhupada forever and our Guru Parampara. Lord Chaitanya had told Sanatana and Rupa Goswami that one day a wonderful boy called Gopal Bhatt Goswami, Gopal Bhatt, will come to Vrindavan, so please take care of him as a younger brother. And Gopal Bhatt Goswami went straight to Vrindavan and took shelter of Rupa and Sanatan. And as soon as he arrived, Rupa and Sanatan wrote to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri that Gopal has arrived. Now, it was not a WhatsApp message. It was not a telegram message. It was not a social media post. In those days, the letters were sent by real people across the country, not by a plane or a train or an automobile. So you can imagine it must have taken some time. Yeah. So when their letter arrived in Jagannath Puri, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with his associates were taking prasadam in the house of Gadadhar Pandit. And as soon as the letter arrived in the hands of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was so ecstatic to learn that Gopal Bhatt had finally arrived in Vrindavan Dham. And it is said that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately left his meal and he composed a letter for Rupa and Sanatan and sent it to Vrindavan along with a set of his coppins. Coppins, for those who don't know, is an outer cloth, and and a chowki. He sent a chowki, which is a small slab of wood on which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would sit. These two things as gifts for Gopal Bhatt Goswami. The acharyas say that the Lord Chaitanya sent his coffins. Now, because when a coffin of a self-realized person is accepted as a prasad, it is said that the attack of Kamadev or lust will diminish in the life of a devotee. So, I mentioned that I have something very special today here for all of you to take darshan after the class, after the program, which is divine, which is transcendental. And it is actually the coffin of Sri Radha Ramanji. And this comes directly from his body in Sri Vrindavan Dham, mercifully gifted to us by one of our dear friends, Manas Goswami, who comes in the family of priests that worship Sri Radha Ramanji in Vrindavan. So we can take darshan afterwards. So, and also in that letter, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's letter to Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, he instructed that Gopal Bhatt Goswami should start giving diksha or start initiating disciples. And that is interesting because Rupa and Sanatan Goswami were very humble. They were not accepting disciples. Rupa Goswami eventually accepted one disciple. Who was that? Srila Jiva Goswami. And then Lokanath Goswami, the first Goswami to come to Vrindavan, who was also present and had taken a vow not to initiate anyone, later on, due to the humility of Narottam Das Thakur, Lokanath Das Goswami accepted him as a disciple. And it is described that everyone in Vrindavan was attracted to Gopal Bhatt Goswami. There's a beautiful description that's given about him, that he was regal in appearance, like a king among Brahmanas, with a smile that shone with compassion. The other Goswamis of Braja were his life heir, and Radharaman Didi was his very soul. Nevertheless, this exalted stature of Gopal Bhatt Goswami always remained, he always remained with an attitude of meekness and humility. And while Gopal Bhatt Goswami lived in Vrindavan for many, many years, he lived in an underground chamber, Sanketa, next to the deity of Sanket Devi. It is this place where Srimati Radharani and Krishna first met. So he remained, there's always a reason why our Acharya stayed in certain places to meditate on the mood and have the mood deeply absorbed. He was deeply absorbed, remaining in this place and remembering the pastimes of that place. But one day, again, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to Gopal Bhatt Goswami in a dream. And he said, Gopal, go to Kaligandaki river and find Sri Hari. Has anybody ever heard of Kaligandaki river? Few of you have. So Kaligandaki river is very, very famous. It is a very sacred river. It flows today in present day Nepal, high in Himalayas, and there is great difficulty to get to this place today. There's one holy spot there called Muktinath, like a small mountain. You have to climb to go to the top, and then in that basin below Muktinath is where sacred Kaligandaki river flows. And this is where Shaligram Shilas come from. That is the river where all the Shaligram Shilas are found. So Mahaprabhu said to Gopal Bhatt Goswami, go there and find Sri Hari, which means find the Lord in his self-manifested form of a Shaligram Shila. There's a joke that we have among some devotees here that we live in round rock. round rock in Hindi means gol patthar. Shaligram chilas are also in the form of round rocks. So many round rocks in hundreds and thousands numerations are found in Kaligandaki river. We are only in one round rock. Again, this was a dream almost 500 years ago. But in reality, now this was an instruction for Gopal Bhatt Goswami by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go to Kaligandaki river. And again, back then, no airplanes, no trains, no cars. You have to go walk and this is an arduous journey. Maybe some horse carts and, there are carts that would take you through a certain distance. So it was a very arduous journey from Vrindavan up to the Kaligandaki river. But Gopal Bhatt Goswami still walked there. And to make the long story short, he brought back 12 Shaligram Chilas. 12. And on his way back, Gopal Bhatt Goswami passed a village called Devabhanda, where he met a Brahmin by the name Madhav Prasad Sharma. Now, Madhav Prasad Sharma, there are actually a couple different versions of this story, but I think they're both authentic. Madhav Prasad Sharma served Gopal Bhatt Goswami very nicely in his house. Gopal Bhatt Goswami was very, very pleased with him. Madhav Prasad Sharma did not have any children, and he asked for blessings for having a child. Gopal Bhatt Goswami blessed him. And as soon as he blessed him, he promised him that if I have a child, that I will give my child to you, to help you in your service. So he had down the road 2 sons, Gopinath Sharma and Damodar Sharma. And it is said that when Gopinath Sharma was 10 years old, this is one version of the story, that Gopinath Sharma, when his son was 10 years old, he showed up at the doorstep of Gopal Bhatt Goswami to help him in his service. But anyway, the other version is that Gopal Bhatt Goswami had, at that time, initiated both of his sons. And they both came to assist him in the worship of his Shaligrams in Vrindavan. Now, of course, Gopal Bhatt Goswami worshipped those Shilas very nicely. But he was always thinking that he would like to worship the Lord in a form where he could dress him with fine clothes and ornaments. But those who know the service of Shaligram, there is only so much you can do. There is not a whole lot of, clothes involved or ornaments involved. Actually, Srila Prabhupada talks about Shaligram worship. He says, very simply, Srila Prabhupada says, you wake him up, you worship him, and you put him to sleep. It is very simple. And it is actually a very high worship. Prabhupada writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita in his purport that he was just waiting till some of his disciples really reached the Brahminical platform, and then he would introduce the worship of Shaligram Shilas. Thus, it is very elevated worship. But Gopal Bhatt Goswami was thinking in his heart that other Goswamis had their own deities, and they were dressing them in fine clothes, ornaments, crowns, jewels, and flutes, and peacock feather, and everything. And I don't have a personal form to worship like this. I have only Shaligrams. So as he kept on meditating like this, one day a very rich merchant came by Vrindavan, and he met with Gopal Bhatt Goswami, and he gave all these beautiful items of worship, deity worship, like clothes and ornaments and crowns and feathers. And it's described that Gopal Bhatt Goswami was worried that all these beautiful objects will be wasted because there was just no way he could use them unless he had a deity of Krishna. He said, you take them. He goes, no, you keep them. I brought this for you. You have to use them in your worship. He goes, how can I use them? I only have, Shaligram Shilas. I don't have the deity of Krishna. No, he said, no, you keep them. And this rich merchant leaves. So one night, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to him once again in the dream, to Gopal Bhatt Goswami. He said, "My dear Gopal Bhatt Goswami, I'm very pleased with your worship. I'm also very pleased that you initiated Gopinath and Damodar Sharma to assist you. And I know in your heart you're very anxious because Shaligram does not have a form. But I assure you, very soon, Krishna will manifest from one of those shilas, depending on your intensity and hankering. And there is a cue for all of us. If we want to see Krishna one day, and we have that desire should be our heartbeat. Just like we breathe every moment and our heart is beating. If we have that desire, depending on our intensity, depending on our hankering, we will be face to face with Krishna. And for that, it's not easy. We're face to face with Krishna only when we give up all our nonsense, attraction to whatever is glimmering in our heart first or glimmering in the world. Because somebody said in a poetic way, all that glimmers is not gold, or all that glitters is not gold. So Krishna will manifest from a shila depending on your intensity and hankering, is what Mahaprabhu told him. Now, this hankering and this intensity is also called as lolyam. So when Gopal Bhatt Goswami awoke from his dream, he was in total ecstasy, you can imagine. Again, personal instructions from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He knew that very soon one of his Shaligram Shilas was going to manifest in this threefold bending form, which he could dress with clothes, give a flute to them, a turban, a peacock feather. So it's described that in this anticipation for the arrival of the Lord, every day Gopal Bhatt Goswami would put all these 12 Shaligram Shilas in a straw basket. And he would swing them from a tree, like we do during Jhulan Yatra. Jhulan Yatra is celebrated by putting Shri Radha and Krishna in a swing and then swinging it to and fro. So he was swinging them and singing bhajans to them. And while doing this, he would think in his mind, when my deity comes, he will have the face of Govinda Devji. His chest will be like Gopinath, and his feet will be like Madan Mohan. And often, when doing puja to his shilas in the morning, Gopal Bhatt Goswami would bathe them. He would say, today I have bathed you with my tears. Why are you not taking the form that Mahaprabhu has promised? I know you are there. I know you are listening. There are actually two authorized versions of what happens next. And one of them is my favorite. It's sweet. So we'll, in the interest of time, not go into the second one. But what happens is that this expected mood of ecstasy of Gopal Bhatt Goswami explodes on the day of Narsingha Chaturdasi, which is the appearance day of Lord Narsinghadev. Lord Narsinghadev. And how did this mood explode? The day of Narsinghdev's appearance day, everyone in Vrindavan was talking about the pastimes of Lord Narsinghadev, how he came out of the pillar. And all day long, Gopal Bhatt Goswami was just hearing this pastime. And the more he heard, the more he cried, and the more he got anxious. Why are you not appearing? Why are you not? You came for Prahlad. You're not coming for me. And then he is thinking, only if I was Prahlad, then you would come. And by this time in the evening, Gopal Bhatt Goswami's patience was running so thin. He actually gave an ultimatum to his Shaligram Shilas. He goes, I am going to Yamuna to take bath. And when I come back and I do not see you manifested in your form, I will tie all of you up around my neck. I will jump in the Yamuna and take my life. Now when Gopal Bhatt Goswami said this, What is the He said, what is the use of worshipping you all if you do not reciprocate with me? Now, as if he's scolding all the Shaligram Shilas. It's like, when a parent scolds their children, sometimes the children are trembling with fear. Yes, children in the room? Now, only pure devotees of the Lord can chastise Krishna. So when Gopal Bhatt Goswami was, scolding the Shaligram Shilas, they were trembling. Now, they are the masters. We are just humble servants. But for Gopal Bhatt Goswami, when he was speaking to them like that, they were all trembling. So he went to Yamuna. He took his bath. He came back. When he came back, he saw. What he saw, he could not believe his eyes. His principal Damodar Shila had manifested into the sweet threefold bending form of Shri Shri Radha Ramanji. Radha Ramanji ki jai. So some of you raised your hands in the beginning of the class when I asked how many of you have seen Radha Ramanji in person in Vrindavan Dham, or maybe his photos. He is such an amazing deity. And one could easily say that Radha Ramanji is the heartbeat of Vrindavan, because all the devotees, when they visit Vrindavan, they always go and visit Radha Ramanji. His ardent followers say that whoever takes darshan of Radha Ramanji gets the benefit of seeing Govinda Devji, Gopinathji and Madan Mohan, because that was a desire of Gopal Bhatt Goswami, that his deity would incorporate the features of those deities. And interestingly, because Radha Ramanji manifested from a Shaligram Shila, there is no Radha Rani. It's very unique, yeah. But then why is he called Radha Raman? Raman means to give pleasure. Radha Raman means he who gives pleasure to Radha. Why is he called Radha Raman if there is no Radha there? Rupa Goswami commented on this. He said, when Radha Raman appeared, he appeared near Nidhivan, the place of Rasalila. That is a place where Krishna gives the greatest pleasure to Srimati Radharani. Thus he got his name like that. And of course, next to Radha Raman, on the altar at the Radha Raman temple, there is a beautiful throne on his left. Just like we have a Radharani on the left of Kunj Bihari here. So on the left of Radha Ramanji is a beautiful throne to his left. And on that throne, there is a feather. Did anybody know that? There is a feather on which Radharani's name is written in Sanskrit. And it is always covered by a cloth. So we cannot see it. These are hidden secrets of Radha Ramanji. So it means that Radha is always there because she is not different than her name. Krishna says in Brahma Vaivarta Puran that on hearing the syllable Ra, I become anxious and bestow my most pristine bhakti upon that chanter. And on hearing the syllable Dha, I personally follow the chanter in order to hear the chanting of the name Radha. So Radha's name is written in Sanskrit on that feather, which is covered by a cloth and sometimes by a crown. Sometimes you'll also see a crown on the top, just next to her beloved Radharaman. So after Radharaman appeared, many incredible loving exchanges take place between Gopal Bhatt Goswami and Radharamanji. Once the deity called Gopal Bhatt Goswami and revealed himself as Gopal, tending cows and surrounded by cowherd boys, as it happens in Vrindavan. On another occasion, Gopal Bhatt Goswami was feeling great separation from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so Radharaman manifested himself as Lord Chaitanya in the freshness of his youth, dressed as a Brahman. And for a moment, Gopal Bhatt Goswami just stood and stared at this enchanting form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Radharaman had just manifested. And he overcame with bliss. He called out, "What have I seen? What am I seeing? What am I seeing?" And he fell unconscious on the ground. Bhakti Ratnakar makes a very profound statement about the relationship between Gopal Bhatt Goswami and his Radharaman. It says that Radharaman would at once satisfy whatever desire was found in any place in the heart of Gopal Bhatt Goswami. Such was the bond between Radharaman and his devotee. And of course, Gopal Bhatt Goswami would worship Radharaman with so much love and devotion. A very close friend and associate of Gopal Bhatt Goswami was Bhugarbha Goswami, whose samadhi is also in Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan. And Bhugarbha Goswami would sometimes watch the puja of Gopal Bhatt Goswami to Radharaman. It was after appearance of Radharaman that Gopal Bhatt Goswami started to accept the disciples in earnest. Previously, he was ordered, of course, by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in that letter, as I mentioned earlier. At that time, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami had also started initiating. And Gopal Bhatt Goswami was empowered to initiate those who came from the western side of India, and whereas Raghunath Bhatt Goswami would initiate those who came from eastern side of India, Bengal specifically. And it is written that Gopal Bhatt Goswami, he was very compassionate, he was very loving, but he was very, very strict also when it came to deity worship of Radharaman, even with his disciples. There was actually an instance when one of his disciples said, "Oh, nobody needs to fast on Ekadasi." And Gopal Bhatt Goswami actually just rejected him. One of the most prominent and famous disciples of Gopal Bhatt Goswami was Srinivas Acharya. And he was directed by Jiva Goswami to take Diksha for initiation from Gopal Bhatt Goswami, even though he came from the eastern side, from Bengal. And he put Srinivas Acharya actually in charge of Radharaman's worship. He had planned to put Srinivas Acharya in charge of Radharaman's worship. But when he saw that Srinivas Acharya was such a wonderful preacher, he actually instructed him to return to Bengal and spread the glories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So there's just so many other beautiful pastimes of Gopal Bhatt Goswami and Radharamanji. But in the interest of time, we will stop here. So we'll give you all an opportunity to take darshan of the coffin of Radharamanji. But before we break for Aarti, is there any questions, comments, realizations anybody might have? Okay, with that, we will stop. And again, all the Srila Prabhupada has given us these gems of Krishna consciousness through his books, elaborations on the commentaries written by our acharyas. So we must make a point to read them, or at least listen to bona fide in a bona fide way the message that is coming through the Guru Parampara based on the teachings of our acharyas. So I'll pause here. Srila Prabhupada ki, Gopal Bhatt Goswami ki, Shri Radha Raman Dev ji ki, Gaur Premanandi.
Let us give a big round of applause.